Hi, welcome to my studio. I'm Barbara Swift and you're watching BSwiftArt. In today's video, we're going to feature a sea turtle. Everybody loves sea turtles, right? I sure do. We're living in Florida. There's a lot of turtle art around the area because we have the sea turtles on both of our coasts. So we're going to use something different today. We're going to use a very unusual art supply, something that you have in your home. Can you guess what it is? If you look at the painting, you might be able to see what it is. But it's in the background of this turtle painting and actually underneath the turtle too. And it'll show through the watercolor as you paint over it. So it gives it a nice dimension, some texture and added color to your painting. Can you guess? I'll let you know. It's called dish soap. That's right. I just use Blue Dawn dish soap. It can be any kind of soap. It can be soap off of a bar, shampoo. And I just use dish soap. Just a couple drops is all you're going to need. You're going to mix it in with your watercolor and water, and we're going to blow bubbles. Then we're going to scoop the bubbles off and lay it onto our paper. Now can you see the effect? Now that you know what it is. So I'm going to show you how to do that in a little bit here, but we're going to start with some supplies. What are we going to need to make our painting? Of course, we're going to need watercolor paper. I like it to be 100% cotton. My favorite brand that I've found so far is Arches, and I love the 300 pound. It's almost like a heavy cardboard, but when you paint on it, it doesn't do the heebie-jeebies, and it also just gives it, you got so much control because the water is absorbing into that paper, and when you do your different techniques, it's going to be much easier for you to do them rather than using a cheaper paper. I've bought some student grade papers in the past just to try them out, and I really don't like how the paint performs on them. But if that's all you can afford, it's better than nothing. You don't worry about that. So whatever you have on hand will work. But if you can afford the better stuff, it's just going to make your job easier. You're going to learn faster because you're not going to have all the problems that the cheaper quality materials create. But whatever you can afford and whatever you get used to, you can still create a gorgeous painting no matter what. I'm going to use two different paint brushes today. I've got my number 8 round and a 00 round. That's it, just two brushes. And then also you need something to scoop up your soap bubbles with. You can use a brush if you want, but it's so little, it's hard to get a lot of bubbles. So I like to use this offset spatula. I used to do wedding cakes, and this is something that I use to ice the sides of my cakes, you know, as you go around and make them nice and smooth. But it works great for watercolor too. Look around your house. There's just so many things that you can use right in your house. Instead of going to the art supply store and buying all kinds of things that cost you a lot of money, you can use things that are right in your house. For applying the soap bubbles, you can also use just like a rubber spatula or even like a flipper, one that you would flip your eggs with. You could use that too. It doesn't matter. Whatever does the job, it'll work. So this is what I used in this video. Also, we're going to do a little bit of embellishment right on top of the painting. As you can see, I've kind of made him kind of like a gypsy turtle. I've got all kinds of different designs in his shell and on his flippers, and you can see the designs that I put around his neck and also in the background. I'm going to show you how to do branches and swirls and bubbles and lots of movement in this painting. It's just really a lot of fun. So I hope you're going to enjoy it as much as I did. I'm going to use Daniel Smith paints today. So for my soap bubbles, I only used 3 colors, 2 greens and a blue. You can do whatever colors you want. So whatever paints you have, whatever your favorite colors are, you can go ahead and use them. It doesn't have to be greens and blues, but that's just what I chose. And then also, I used a lot of pinks and orange and yellow in the shell itself, and green and yellow on the body. So you're going to need a few colors of that paint. Or you can just mix blue and yellow together and you'll get green. If you use a little bit less blue, you'll get a more yellow-green. So you can mix your own colors too. You just need red, yellow, and blue, and you have any color in the world. All right, Okay, so what do you think? You ready to get started? I'm going to make this video a slow video. It's going to be kind of long, but the reason for that is so that you can paint along with me, so that you don't have, I'm not getting way ahead of you and you're way behind me. You can also just stop the video, and then pick it up again when you're done with that step, or pick it up tomorrow or in a month from now. Okay, so we're going to have that video up on the channel here so that you can always access it. Well, great. I'm so happy that you're with me today. I hope that you'll leave a comment in my comment box and also send me a picture. I'm going to have a Facebook page very soon where you can send your pictures and share them with another group, and we can critique each other and learn together. So I'll be working on that, and I'll be getting that up soon, and I'll put that here on my YouTube channel so that you'll know where to go. All right, so let's get started. Here's a list of supplies that you're going to need. Just the jars. You could use cups instead of jars if you want, but that's just to mix the paint in and all the other stuff there. Okay, here's what I did. I did start with a jelly jar. Got a little bit of Dawn dish soap and my paint. So I have just about an inch of water in the bottom of my jar here. It's maybe like an 8-ounce jar. And this is Viridian, one of my favorite watercolors. I just love blues and greens, turquoisey colors. So I just put about maybe a 1/2 inch worth of paint in there, like if you were going to squeeze it out onto a popsicle stick or something, about a 1/2 inch of paint. A good dollop, like a large green pea, about that much. So I'm just going to put that right in the jar and take any old brush. I'm just going to use this for mixing. So I'm stirring it up and trying to make sure all of that paint that's on the bottom is going to get dissolved. So it takes a little bit of stirring. So I stir it up and then try to make sure I don't feel any lumps in there. Squish them against the side and break them down a little bit. And just stir it up good. And then we're going to add some dish soap. So here I'm going to add just a little bit, a couple drops, maybe a couple big drops. Just depends on how much water you have in your cup there. Stir it in. Make sure that it's all incorporated with the watercolor paint and the water. So just make sure it's all in there and all my lumps are gone. Okay, I have my watercolor paper taped down. I have a straw here. This straw is kind of the bendy kind. Those are good because if you can't get the right angle without pouring your water and paint mixture onto your paper by accident, the angle helps to keep it more level. I'm just going to blow bubbles. I'm blowing them so they come right out the top of the jar. Then I'm taking my spatula and I'm just grabbing as many bubbles as I can and just gently, very gently laying them down on top of the paper. I don't want to push them down onto the paper or the bubbles will collapse and we won't get the pattern underneath. It'll just be solid. So just keep on applying your bubbles. This takes a little while to get it all covered into the darkness that you want it to be. You can have little tiny bubbles or big bubbles. And just brushing the very top of my bubbles, not collapsing them, but barely touching them just to spread them out. Just keep on blowing some bubbles. And when you place them, we're kind of looking to not put them all in one spot, just randomly all over the paper. And that's my little doggie. I have her in my lap as always. And if you have a little splotch like that, don't panic. It's okay. Just take a paper towel and just blot it. Don't rub it or you'll smear it. But if you blot it, it'll be fine. And once you have all these colors on there, you're going to never see that. Just keep working at the bubbles. And I'm rolling that spatula as I go just to make it easier for them to stick. Oh, I dropped some more paint. Let's blot it up. Just keep putting it on there. Just wipe off my spatula, wipe up my table a little bit. It can be a little messy. So now I'm going to switch colors. So now I'm going to that French ultramarine and blow, blow, blow. And now I'm going to put these bubbles right on top of some of the old bubbles, and some of them I'm placing on the white paper, the plain paper that didn't get anything yet. So the goal is to fill out the whole paper with these soap bubbles. Blotting as I go. I'm always messy. Anyway, we're gonna keep applying these bubbles here and putting some, like I said, over the top of others. What I'm trying to avoid is just circles of piles of bubbles. I want it to be stretched out and layered on top of the other ones. This is supposed to be kind of the sea's atmosphere, like the background in the sea. And that there might be objects back there, but we're not defining them. So we're just kind of putting all these different colors, which will show that there's other things back there, other things than what our subject is. So this is the Hooker Green Dark. I like this color a lot. It can be a really great color in florals too. The Hooker Green, the regular one's a little too bright, but the dark one, I like the color of that. You do get a nice true green, but it's still deep enough where it could have be something natural. So maybe there's some algae on rocks in the background somewhere out there. So that's why I'm putting the green in, green plants in the sea. Just keep on layering, layering until you get the depth that you want. So remember that watercolor will dry lighter, about 20% lighter. So go a little bit darker than your end result and what you're looking for at your end result. I'll put a little bit more here, and you can see I'm kind of going all different directions, up and down, vertically, crisscross, and going darker where I see there's like darker spots and I want them to blend a little more. So I'll start at the darker spot and blend it out to the lighter spot, and that'll give me another layer of color in that area. Now your paper is going to be very wet. You wouldn't think so just laying bubbles, but that's a lot of water in there. So it's going to be very, very wet. So when you're done with this step, you're going to want to let it dry, or you can take a blow dryer once the bubbles have dissipated. You can take a blow dryer and dry your paper, or you can just take a break, go do something for an hour and come back, and it should be dry. And you'll know it's dry if it's room temperature. If you place like the inside of your wrist on top of your paper and it's cool, there's still water in that paper, and you want to get it dry. Otherwise the next step will bleed and be fuzzy. Alright, so let's paint the turtle. The fun part, all the colors. Okay, so we gotta either draw a turtle freehand or you have a pattern. If you took my class, you should have a pattern. And this is just some graphite paper or carbon paper, something to transfer it to. And typically it has a matte side like this and a shiny side or darker side. You can see I've already used this for other projects. You can use it over and over again. So I'm going to lay that dark side onto my dry paper. And I'm barely touching it there. You don't want to smudge that paper or it'll make smudge marks underneath, and you already have your painting started, so you can't do too much about it. But line them up wherever you want. So that very left edge I'm lining up with my tape, because that's going to be the border of my painting. And the little big flipper there on the bottom, there's no paper under there, but that's okay, we'll just move it when we get to that spot. I'm taking some masking tape, and I want to put it just at the very top of my pattern. I'm not taping down the graphite paper, just the top pattern, so that I know where it belongs, and I can lift it up and I can take away that graphite paper and I can see my tracing underneath. So I want to make sure that I've got all the spots traced, the whole turtle traced, and also I want to check to see how dark I'm tracing. So I'm just using a regular pencil here, and I'm just very lightly. I'm starting out very light, just tracing a little bit, and then I'm going to check to see how dark my lines came out. So I'm just going to lift up the pattern and take away the graphite paper and try to see my lines. I can barely see them, which is the goal, really. That's what you really want to do, but you'll never be able to see what I'm doing. So I'm going to go back and press a little bit harder and go over those same lines and see if it comes out a little bit darker. So let's check. There it is. You can see it much better. Okay, so for this one, because we're going to be doing, you know, all these bright colors and those lines will just disappear, that's fine. But normally you want to go light. Okay, so I started the shell, and I'm going to show you how I accomplished that with these other little squares that we have underneath. Somehow my video cut out there and I lost all that. But you'll see how to do it. It's more of the same, just like what I'm going to be showing you. So I'm just taking my round brush and I'm just barely wetting that little square. And now I'm going to take my rose and just put some rose on there. Try to define my edges a little bit. And then put some rose in between. Now I'm going in with another color, so I have a really pretty orange. I'm going to drop a little bit of that orange in there. And I'm going to let it mix in with the rose. And now I put some blue, and it's mixing with the rose and making a purple. So since my blue was so watery, I went ahead and started the next one just with the blue and put it out over there so I didn't have to waste my paint. And I'm just taking some yellow. I put some yellow in the first one and some yellow into the next one. And I decided, since these spots are pretty small and I've got paint on my brush, I'm just going to go ahead and start the rest of the little squares here. Coming back with some orange, and you can see the yellow and the blue made like a lime green, so that was really pretty. That's my dog. That would be Dex. You see somebody outside walking their dog, he feels he's got to welcome everybody. Alright, now I'm going back with some blue, and I'm letting those colors mix. So the blue and the yellow are making green, and the pink and the yellow made a little bit of orange, and then the pink and the blue make a purple. Oh, drop some blue there, no problem, just blot her up. Okay, so I'm going to fill in my little squares, and as you can see, I still have a little bit more room for some pure color. Just drop it in those empty spots. Clean up the edges with the tip of my brush so that they're nice and defined. And I'm adding in a little bit of rose into these ones. I didn't get any yet. And then I'm just taking some of that orange and I'm just kind of darkening them up and moving the paint around a little bit. Okay, so now I'm just going to let that dry. You can see the turtle shell is still drying, but at the top of the shell you can see where I started first and how it mixed and mingled, and that made a nice effect, but you can see how it's lighter. Now I'm going to start on the flipper, and I'm just using purple. And I'm just filling in all my little spots here on his flipper. And while I'm doing this, I'm just doing this with wet paint on dry paper. That's a wet on dry technique. And it's because the space is so very small, and I'm not doing a whole lot of mingling of colors, so I'm just filling them in at this one. So I'm just going to go ahead and paint them on. Now I used purple. You can use other colors if you want. You can make it real colorful. You can make it less colorful. I want you to be creative and use your creative side of your brain. You do whatever colors you like. I'm going to do the other little flipper there too. Sorry about that wound on my hand. I burnt myself, and I'm sure it's been like a month already. It takes so long. Just on the oven, you know. So it's healing. It's almost there. Yeah, we're just going to continue filling in all of these little spots. And we're letting them dry. Before we do go on to the next step, they have to be nice and dry. Paint this one here. And some places I'm letting the paint cool up a little bit. I like that because it'll give you a little variation within that spot without adding other colors. And he's also got some spots on his head. Excuse me. And we're just painting those in the same way. And here you can see how where I lift up my brush, it'll leave a little puddle darker. Normally I try to even that out like that there. But you don't have to. You can leave them like that and it'll give a little interest to those spots. You want to go ahead and define your edges so that they're nice and clean. I'm just using the tip of the brush. And just outlining it and then filling it in. If you get too much water on there, the paper won't absorb it fast enough and it'll bleed. So you want to be mindful of how much water you're using with your paint, but you want to have enough so that it has the transparency to it. So don't fill your brush too much. I'm just using the tip of it at this point so I have that control so I can outline those spots. And if some of them get out of hand and start touching each other, it's okay, it'll look good still. Watercolor's not real forgiving, but you need to be forgiving to yourself. So don't have high expectations and let the watercolor do its thing. Look at how pretty those colors are mixing there as they're drying. And you can see the contrast of the purple on the fins and also on his head. I like that. And now we're going to go with some green. So use yellow and your French ultramarine and you'll get a pretty lime green. So on this, because it's a big area and I want it to be rather smooth, I'm going to go ahead and apply water first, just plain water. And I'm going to apply that on a workable chunk of the painting, let's say. So you got to work fast so that it doesn't dry while you're painting, but I didn't want to put the water on the whole space at this point because it's too large and that water would dry before I got to that point. So I'm just going kind of behind his fin and I'm going to try to keep that leading edge to the rest of his body. I want to keep that wet. So I'm going to go ahead and try to paint as quick as I can, and I'm going to paint the back side of the body behind the fin, and then I'm going to take some yellow at this point and just make his belly just a little brighter, because they do have like a light belly and then it has a pattern almost like the same pattern as the shell has, but there's not a lot of variation in color on their belly side. So I'm just going to do that with yellow and green and just give that suggestion that it is different than right under his shell. And under his shell would be a little bit darker because he would have a little shadow casting, because it does stick out a little bit before it blends back into his body. So I'm adding my water to the rest of the body here, up his neck and under his chin, and I'm using that green. And I was able to do it quick enough to where that did not dry yet. Now it'll blend nicely together. And then take that green. See how those bubbles are showing through underneath his neck? I think that's so pretty. It gives it that texture, and a lot of times they have wrinkles right there. So that kind of mimics that. I'm going to take the yellow and put the yellow on the belly side and under his chin. And making sure everything is still wet before if it dried out, it would have a little line where the dry and the wet colors meet. So I'm trying to avoid that. But if it happened, you can always improvise somehow. You always got to tell a story as you're painting, more to yourself than anything, but to give yourself a break when it doesn't turn out exactly how you envisioned, because most of the time it doesn't. We're painting with tinted water. I mean, let's face it, it's going to be a little harder to get it to do exactly what we thought it would do. But that's the beauty of watercolor, that freedom to just let it do its thing and to look at it and adjust from there. So I'm going ahead and putting this green in, and I'm doing it a little bit darker, so I'm using it a little bit more. And you don't have to be too fussy with that. I'm putting it in between the dots, but I'm just kind of dabbing it in there, here and there. And you can see there's some parts that are lighter and some parts that are darker, and that's okay. I like it like that. So that's the thing, whatever you think is beautiful. You're painting for yourself, and to get, joy out of your painting, something you enjoy, just do it how you like it. So I'm putting that orange just on the back side of his beak, right in there, and I kind of left a highlight area in the very front of his beak. And I'm going to come back with some yellow. Now that orange is wet there, so it will blend together. So here I'm kind of coaxing it with my brush, and I'm going to watch it and see what it does. And put a little bit darker here on the bottom. And remember, it's all wet, so it'll start to wick into the other colors. You can see right there, it's going into that yellow a little bit. And I'm just kind of coaxing it with my clean brush. Just smushing it around a little because I want that to mix, but I want to leave that highlight on the tip of his beak. Now we're going to come back and put a little bit more green around the eye because there's going to be some shadow because it's bulging. I just want to define it a little bit. If you want, if you're more advanced, you can go ahead and define it, put the shadows in, but you don't have to just starting out. We're just getting the color on the paper. And I'm going to take the yellow and go in between all of these little empty spots here on his shell. And you can see I'm just kind of loosely dabbing it in there. I just want to get the color in there, and any parts that are glaring, you can add color to, but you can, just leave some missed spots too. It'll be fine. Just carefully going in with the very tip of my brush, that's right there. But if I go over onto the parts that already are painted, this yellow is in those spots, and it'll mix in really nice. I'm not worried about it. There we go. And now we have his little flipper. So the same thing, I'm going to paint in between, but I'm not being too careful. I'm just painting, it's going over the purple a little bit, but the purple is darker than the yellow is. So when I put it over the purple, there might be a little tinge of that yellow on the purple. But you can still see the definition of all the purple spots because it's a lighter color. Now if I went with something more similar like a blue, probably would make those spots disappear. And also when you're putting another color on top of a previous color that's already dry, that's very important. Those has to be dry. Now I'm going to put the wet color on top of those spots. Those colors will layer and make a new color. So that's okay in this case. But if you don't want to do it, you don't want it to be a new color, then you have to take a really fine brush and be very meticulous about going precisely around all of these little spots on his flipper. So trying to make it easy for you, but it's up to you how detailed you want to get into this. We're just using easy colors. I'm going to go ahead and fill the whole flipper in. Paint with the tip of my brush, and that'll about do it right there. Just evening out any blobs I have, maybe blot one off here and there. Okay. So now we have to go on to the eye. This is where that 00 comes in. So I'm going to fill in around the highlighted spots first. So I'm going to outline them. So that's just highlights, like where light would be hitting his eye. Make him look a little more natural. And then I'm going to fill in the rest of the eye there. Now I didn't go ahead and do all the details of an eye, the iris and the pupil and all that. You can do that if you want to. We're just trying to have some fun and be very simple so everybody can do this painting. I'm just filling it in. I'm using Payne's Gray, which is almost a black, but it's actually a really dark charcoal. It's a great color. I use it a lot because you can also add a lot of water to it and get a very, very light gray, which is really good for shading. I'm just trying to define his eyes. So I'm outlining the lines that I had in my drawing here. So he's got a thicker eyelid. It kind of bulges out. And then underneath he's got his eyelid there. And just clean it up and thicken that up a little bit so it gives it a little depth and make it look a little more dimensional. Thicken that outer line up, and now above his eye, and just make that a little bit bolder so it looks a little bit bulgy. Okay, so that ought to be good. And now he needs a little bit of those purple spots on his eye as well. Add some of those, and then we still have a little definition in the beak to do. So I'm still using the 00 brush, and I got some purple, and I'm just going to freehand do some little spots, just making a circular motion with the tip of that brush. And I'm just going to put them here and there, making sure some of them look like they're kind of rolling behind the eye there, right at the edge, and some in the center, so that it looks like it's more natural. You don't want to line them up like soldiers because turtles just don't have spots like that. And we'll just kind of put a few in here and there. And also underneath on his little lower eyelid, we'll do some small little dots. You don't have to put too many. And just and maybe one right there. And maybe one over here. Secret is know when to stop. And I'm just going to draw another couple little lines, one in and one under, because they're kind of got a lot of layers to those lids. They wrinkle up a little bit. Okay, so there's the eye. And now the beak. We'll give him a little nose. And now we can take a good look at everything. At this point, your painting can be done. It can be a beautiful sea turtle, but hey, why not? Time to doodle. Let's draw on top of it. This is just an extra step. He can be done at this point, and he'd be a beautiful turtle. But I'm going to use some Posca paint markers. These markers have like acrylic paint in them, and so that they're still archival. And I'm going to draw on my turtle. Very carefully, try not to drag your hand in it. I've done that so many times because it's acrylic paint, so it takes a little while to dry too. So work in areas that you can work away from your painting. And try not to drag your hand in there. So we're going to go around his head. Make sure you shake up these paint markers. You got to shake them really good. There's a little ball like in nail polish or something in there that you can shake it up. And then it's kind of like you got to push on the tip to activate it. So that's why I have my little paper next to me, so that I can make sure that it's started and it's coming out really nice before I put it on my painting. And I'm going all the way to the bottom of the fin, but I forgot to put that in the frame. There we go. So just in between all those little purple spots, I'm putting a little bit of green. I'm kind of outlining them, just defining them a little, because I'm going to put some doodles in here and they need a border. So that's my border. And then I'm going to come around, and I kind of got to lift my arm a little bit so that I don't drag through the rest of that. So basically these are all the same drawings that you use to trace. See, I'm pushing that tip down and testing it. You got to do it periodically because it'll kind of you'll use up all the paint that's in that tip. It doesn't keep going. Now I'm going to put some circles here. I don't know why I chose circles. Maybe because... Okay. As I was saying, I don't know why I chose the circles, but I think it's kind of like bumpies. They don't have scales, but their skin's got texture to it, and I like making these patterns. And I think it also goes along with sea, with bubbles and the oxygen coming up through the water. So I'm doing circles that are all touching each other. You can do whatever pattern you like to do. But I'm letting my circles touch each other, and I'm doing big circles and small circles and medium circles. And I'm just drawing one circle and then kind of filling in around that circle with smaller circles. So there's a little bit medium one, little tiny one, medium one, smaller one. And they don't have to be round. They can be oblong or just whatever shape you want them to be. And it's real important to stay within that border though. So don't let your circles creep out beyond the borders. Okay, and then I'm going to put some underneath his shell. So this is how I'm kind of making it look like there's shadows. So there's shadow also underneath his chin. And then remember we were talking about that light underbelly. So I'm going to leave it light. And I'm just going to put this little circle pattern wherever there would be shadows. So you can see I'm doing a big circle there and another one and then a medium one. And then filling in around it with smaller circles or whatever fits into the space. And I'm trying to make them all touch each other and have no gaps in between them, so the little circles will fill in the spaces between. And I'm just kind of making it maybe, an inch and a half wide, my little strip of circles, but I'm going to make it a little more random, not so it's just a solid stripe on the bottom there. So you can see, I've got some small circles and big circles, and I'm not trying to make it a straight line. I'm just letting them circles do their thing. And then his shell kind of flips over, into his chest it ends, and then the whole neck, will be full of circles. And underneath his shell here, I'm putting little circles too. And that's because there'd be like a little shadow under there. So to give it a little bit of dimension. And I'm also kind of looking at the bubble pattern as I go, and in some spots I'm outlining the lighter bubbles because it'll really make them show up. It'll be a lot of contrast. So there you go. There's all those little circles underneath his chin, by his neck, underneath the shell, and the one flipper. So that's all I did there. So now I want to finish his shell on the back, and I called it a gypsy shell, but you know, I'm just thinking kind of boho, you know, where you got a lot of different patterns. I'm thinking it's almost like embroidery, and I want to use all the colors that I put in the shell. So on my Posca paint markers here, I've got a pink, a yellow, a green, a blue. We already used green in the shell, so I'm going to stick with these other colors. And so I'm going to start by outlining the little shell section, I guess. And normally they have like a very almost like a flame pattern going like a fan. I don't want to really duplicate that, but I make my own pattern, and this kind of looks like a sun rays. So I have the little corner. I'm going to start them all out in one corner and then let those rays fan out to the opposite side. So first outlining it. So here's the yellow, and now I'm going to draw my little half circles here. That's kind of like the sun, and then drawing some rays. And they don't have to be real straight. They can be a little wavy. See? And I'm going to do that in different colors on the rest of the shell. And the pink shows up really pretty. So if your shell turned out a little darker, these lines that we're drawing will show up more. They'll have more contrast. See, I'm putting wavy lines on this one. They'll have more contrast, and that can be really pretty. On this, I wanted it to be a little bit more subtle, so that if you just kind of look at it, you're like, oh, she put something in there. So I'm kind of, like, my tone of my color is almost the same as my markers. And this one's going off the edge, so I just kind of imagined where that point would be, where they're all fanning out from, and just put it in there. So there's my little sun, and there's my rays. You could also use stencils and colored pencils. You can just do this with a paintbrush, and you can use acrylic paint on top of it, or you can use like gouache, because that's more of an opaque watercolor. You could use pastels, anything you like. It's your painting. Have fun with it. Now I'm going to take some of the pink again here and draw my little sun, and now the rays. So I always like to start with that middle ray because it gives me the direction for where all the rest of them will go. There. And some yellow. And if you mess up a little like I did there, just make it a thicker line and make them all thicker. There. Now you can see the paint kind of ran out, so I had to shake it, and I had to test it on my test paper and just continue on. I went back over this part where it ran out. And take my orange. You could do daisies, you could do spots, you could do butterflies, you could do fishies, you can do all kinds of patterns in there, and you don't have to do them all the same. You can make them all different on each little section. And finally the blue. I have a Chihuahua. I have two Chihuahuas. One's a Rat Terrier Chihuahua. And that's Coco, and you might have seen her in some of my videos. But they are always around me, so they're always in my videos somehow, either by sound or I'm actually showing them. The other one is Dax, and he's a regular full-size Chihuahua. Coco's little. She's a tiny thing. So he was just walking in my vertical blinds on my door. So now I'm doing this one. I'm just decided to do it all in pink. And I'm doing kind of a Greek key pattern where it can fit in. There we go. And you can see some of them were too tiny to kind of do it, so I just drew a line through there. But there's all of the doodling on the shell. And all my little bubbles. And his eye. And looking at it, and I'm thinking that we want to do a little bit more, so I'm going to outline the back of his shell with the green. There, that kind of defined that a little better. And I'm going to outline all of my little purple spots with my purple pen, just because everything else seems to be outlined, so it should all be cohesive. So I'm just going to go ahead and just drawing around them. So this is a little bit of a cheat, because if you didn't get real clean lines, you can fix it with these pens. And these, of course the acrylic here is not transparent, so it'll cover up things. Okay, so I went ahead and did all of the flippers, and we'll do the same on the head. Oh, and I went out of the lines a little bit. I went too high. Now I got to decide, do I want to fuss with that and try to make it smooth, or is it okay? So here I have to adjust. And that one was touching, that one's touching. So you can see it's not perfect. It's not what I intended it to be, but it's still fine. It'll still look really nice. So go ahead. And I think I'm just going to leave that where I went out of the lines and on the top of his head there above his eye. I'm just going to leave it alone. I think it'll be fine. Take a little bit of the orange and define just that one little side of his beak. And I got the white, and I'm going to brighten that highlight in his eye with the white. There we go. Yeah. So there's all the little patterns. Do I want to define his beak a little bit? I think it looks fine. I don't know if I'd want to use yellow or orange. The orange would look bad, so I just leave it alone. Alright, here's another one that I had done. And this one shows up a little better, these little designs I did in the background. So I'm using the blue. I don't want them to show up too much. I don't want to take away from the turtle. So I'm testing it on my paper and shook it up really good. And I'm going to do kind of like seaweed. I'm thinking seaweed. So I'm just going to freehand a wavy line all the way down. And then I'm going to go next to it with some more wavy lines. Just like he's swimming through the middle of some kind of plant. So I don't have a bottom or a top where it ends or not. I'm just doing some lines. They don't have to line up against each other. In fact, you don't want them to really be liner. So some are thicker on the top and thinner on the top and more wavy. Just don't crisscross them. That's what I'm doing. You could if you really wanted to draw in seaweed, but I'm just doing a pattern, thinking pattern. So I'm leaving sections to where I can draw inside my pattern. And because I'm obsessed with these circles and I think they look like bubbles, I'm going to go ahead and fill in my biggest section with all these little circles, the same as I did on the turtle. And I'm kind of looking at my paper and seeing that there's bubbles in it where there's the lighter spots. I want to outline them because they really show up. As you can see in the turtle, like right under his shell there, they look more yellow. And the bigger spots will be lighter and smaller spots are going to appear darker, which is good. And I'm just going to continue and draw these little circles all the way down this whole strip. I think it reminds me of, I used to have a lot of aquariums, and we had a reef tank, that had all the ocean fishes in there, the real colorful saltwater tank, and the corals, and had those for years. And in there we would put, it's called a bubbler, and you put that little rock that has oxygen pumped into it, and you'd bury it under the sand a little bit, and then you'd have like a stream of bubbles that went up through the water to the top. And it's really good for the fish so that they can get a little bit of oxygen in their water. So you keep it circulating with these bubblers. So I think that's what this is to me, these bubbles. It's the bubbler. You can do whatever you want in here. You can just do a lot of swirls or a lot of lines. And this is just an extra step. You don't have to do this to have a beautiful painting. You can stop at any point. Just gonna fill those all in there. Now you can see a little section of it, and as I'm completing it, you can see the effect that I'm looking for, just a swoosh of bubbles. I really like this process of just doodling, just drawing. Get your music going. It's mindless. You're not thinking too much. I like to not think too much. Sometimes you gotta think too much. Yeah, so just kind of outlining those white parts there. I want to make them show up. Yeah, so it's just, kind of fun and relaxing just to doodle. Kind of like when you're talking on the phone and you're just kind of drawing on a little notepad. Well, back in the day when you had to actually go to your phone on the wall, you always had a notepad and a piece of paper there, and you'd draw on it, or while you're talking on the phone, or write people's phone numbers or, notes on the paper. But most of the time you just doodled on them. Sometimes you'd get some really good little patterns going. So this is also known as Zentangle, or it's also called Zen. You can look things up on YouTube, and you can see tons of different repeating patterns that people draw and put them on to embellish their design. Sometimes their whole design is nothing but the Zentangle. So it's more of a pattern that you would repeat, the Zentangle. But it's kind of evolved through the years, and people are doing a lot of random things, and they call that Zentangle. So I'm not really sure what the exact definition is, but you can look up Zentangle, Zentangle, and you'll see all kinds of patterns and artwork that people have done using just different doodles. I guess it appeals to people who like to draw. And even if you're not really good with your drawing skills, this is fun. You can draw, and as you're doing this, you do learn more drawing skills. So when I'm doing my circles, I'm completing the circle from the starting point to the ending point. Continual circle. I don't want to just do a half circle because it kind of fits in that space. I'll still continue it around just to get it nice and smooth. And remember, we're doing big ones and medium ones. And I'll just let you listen to the music while we finish this part of it. And you can speed ahead if you don't want to wait for me. Okay, we're almost done. Lots and lots and lots of circles. You might need a break after that. Okay, there's all my circles. They're not perfect, but that's okay. Okay, so now you can see those stripes, my little swirls, and I got that little bulge there, so I didn't like that too much. So I'm going to go ahead and try to camouflage it a little bit by putting in these diagonal lines, and some are closer and farther apart than others. I'm trying to keep that angle, and as it kind of bends and swirls, I adjust the angle. And I went right off the bottom there and didn't show you that, but here we go. Just kind of adjusting that angle as I go along. It changes just slightly. And the beauty of putting your paper on a board is that you can move it around. You can see I kind of went into my little flipper there. I'll fix that later. Just put a little bit more purple on there. Or let's just do it while we're thinking about it. And I'm just going to take my purple and redefine it a little bit there. Whoops, I got a little too thick. I'll just blend it into the rest of it. Adjusting as you go. Just adjusting. Not all's lost just because you make a little mistake. I joke and say that just proves it's handmade. Because if it was a machine, it'd be perfect, right? They're not machines. Not yet, anyway. Okay, I'm going to flip it around. Don't get dizzy. Close your eyes. And I'm going to continue on and finish this little angle line pattern all the way up. And my little angle is flattening out a little bit more here. And I got it a little flatter than I wanted, but we're just going to kind of continue and adjust as we go up. And now we're actually going the other side, other direction. And there we go. Okay, so that kind of gives that little leaf a little bit of movement, and I'll thicken that just a little. Taking a risk. Yeah, just kind of blending that in more and don't go over his beak. That looks a little better. That doesn't stand out as much to me, that little bump there. So, yeah, just kind of evened it out. Now I'm thinking, what else do I want to do? Do I want to just leave the rest of them just like they are? Because they look good. I don't want to make it too busy. So now I'm going to come back and do some branches. So, you know, some of the vegetation that feeds the turtles in the ocean. And I'm not sure what they eat, but this is a pattern that I like to do also. So that's the one I chose. So I went ahead and drew in just some branch lines. So you can see they're just swervy, curled lines. And now I'm going to add branches to it. So see that V right there? That's what you want. You want all of your added branches to end up in that V pattern. Just filling in the spaces with my branches and making sure that when I add a branch, it comes out and leaves a V. You can add as many or as little as you like. Just branches. This works great on trees as well, this technique. And making them come from one side, going from the other side, and you can overlap them if you want, but I chose not to because I'm just making patterns, so I'm not making nature so much. This is just fun pattern. So I'm just drawing my little V shapes and making sure that my branches are filling in because I want like a little mass of branches, a little clump growing. Made all my little V's. And then I'm going to continue that underneath the turtle so it looks like it's in the background. And I'm purposely not going over any of the other things that I've drawn. And just continuing it down all the way to the bottom, I'm going to draw my little V shapes. And then we're going to add to the tips of these branches. You can add more circles if you want. I'm thinking teardrop shapes, so I'm going to do some little small teardrops, just like little jewels on the tips of these branches here. So I apologize, I didn't realize it was out of frame, but I'm just adding more branches on the bottom, the same as I did above him, and I'll show you this in a minute here. And just adding a few more here, so as I'm looking at it, I can see where there's some empty spaces, and I'm just adjusting as I go here and filling it in. And I'll start these little teardrops. I'm making them kind of small, just kind of making an elongated circle, kind of keeping it rounded on the top. And I have this sped up a little bit so that, you know, it does take me a little bit longer time in real life to do that. But we're just kind of putting those little circles or teardrop shapes, oval shape, on the tip of each branch. And sometimes I might get a little off center and it just doesn't look like it came out of that branch, so then I might have to go back and thicken the branch a little bit, just a little bit. And I'll be doing that. I'm sure I'm going to mess up here somewhere soon so you can see that. So just keep on going right there, kind of adjusting a little bit. And remember, that paint is wet under my hand, so it looks like my hand's laying right on the paper, but it's not. It's up just a little bit. Make sure you get each tip, and you can come back and make them a little nicer. See there, I had to thicken that stem a little bit, but it's okay. It blends in. Whoop, I'm going to turn them upside down here to do the underneath part. And you can see I made my branches kind of wavy also because I think they're very delicate, and with the movement of the water they'd be kind of swaying in the water. So instead of making them very straight, I made them wavy. And I'm just going to go ahead and add these little teardrops to the rest of them. If they end up touching each other, it's okay. That one almost touched. Okay. Did I get every one of them? Looks like I did. Turn it back over. Don't get dizzy. There you go. There, you can see it better. So it looks like he's swimming through them, so he's in front of them. Just adjusting a few that didn't turn out as nice. So next I'm going to do, these are called polyps, and they grow on the coral. And they have lots of little gills. They look like mushrooms to me, or kind of like flowers in the ocean, and they grow on the live rock. So I'm starting out by making the circles in the middle, and then I'm just bringing out these little gills. And I kind of went and did like big shapes, sectioned it off, and then went back in and sectioned it off some more until I felt that I could just continue with the gills, and then they'll all be in the right direction. Because if I start just drawing little lines, I end up getting out of, how can I explain that? Out of whack, I guess, and all the lines will end up looking like they go off to one side, and I don't want that. So that's why I section it off first. And I'm just kind of using my bubbles here, the pattern that my bubbles left. So I kind of outlined that lighter part. So there's my center. Now I'm sectioning it off. So it's almost like a right angle from that center. And then I'm going to make those sections even smaller. So this way it makes sure that I get all the gills in the right direction. It's coming out from that center. And go smaller, dividing them again in half. And sometimes I didn't get it exactly where I wanted, so I got 2 in there instead of 1, but that's okay. I'm going to continue around with that at this point. And some of them touch and some of them don't, and that's alright also. Yeah. You see how they all kind of touched on that left side, but it looks good. It looks like they're tucked in because they're kind of wavy. So now I'm just trying to look into my paper and see what might look good. Another one over here. And I'm putting that center sometimes closer to the edge, sometimes farther away. That'll just make it look more natural. Like if you think of flowers and they're not all facing exactly the same way. That's what I'm trying to achieve here. And sectioning it off until those sections get small, and then I can just continue and go all the way around, filling in those little sections now that those guidelines are down. Just keep going. You can do these in all different colors if you want. You can also do them in little patterns, different patterns. If you want to put wavy lines in there, you can crisscross the lines and put little dots where they crisscross. Just have fun with it. And this little section, I can't really draw the whole thing, but there would be one behind there, so I'm just kind of through that circle there, and that will be the line I'm working off of to do my little section. There. And let's see, I can see a little bit of a shape right here that I could follow. And he'd be kind of tucked underneath these other ones. So I drew my circle, but you see I didn't complete the circle. I let it, the one in front of it, be overlapping it. I let my circle end at that point. And how about one right up here? Again, that is underneath, so didn't necessarily show the entire circle. I'm just drawing my sections. You can make the border darker, like you can make a thicker border using the same color so that they all stand out a little bit more. How about one right here? Just a little tinier one. And I'm kind of just looking, like where else should I put one? I don't really want to make a wall, like a straight up wall, although that could be natural like that in the ocean. So this is a big one that's tucked up underneath. And just sectioning it off. And go littler sections. And then even smaller. In between all those sections where I can. Some of them might already be kind of small. And just drawing all those little lines, making them look like gills in a mushroom. There. And how about one right here so that it's not just straight up against that border, the edge of the painting. Don't want to make it like a box. Like it's growing up a wall, but not so that they're different shape on the other side. And how about putting a few up? Go right there. I don't want to go beyond that point, but I'm just going to draw a couple here so that it looks like he's swimming in front of all of these little sea polyps. The ones I had in my aquarium were purple and like a lime green. They were beautiful. They come in all different colors and different patterns. But at night, they all, I guess they kind of live in little tubes that are all close together. And that's like a whole organism that will keep growing and expanding over the rock. And out of that little tube, these little polyps will shoot out during the day. That's how they feed. So these little polyps look like little bouquets of flowers on the rocks. They're really beautiful. And they move. And, you know, as little minerals and things from the water, algae or whatever's float by, they move and they get those little organisms, and that's how they feed. So they feed in the middle, and at night they all retreat and go back into their little tubes when the lights are out. Okay, so there's my polyps. And I think I'm going to leave him just like that. I don't think he needs any more embellishment. I was thinking about this on the side. I think I'll just sign my name there. There we go. Once you sign the painting, you're done, right? Usually. Okay, well, there's the painting. There's the finished painting. I thank you so much for staying to the end. I know it was a long one, but I hope you were able to paint with me. And if you get something out of my videos, could you please subscribe and press that like button and ring that bell for notification when a new video comes out. Again, thank you so much, and I hope you have peace and love in all of your days, and I hope we'll meet again soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.